Welcome.
Hey there.
I'm Adria.
I'm Andrea, and welcome to
The Chronic Hustle. How are you, my dear?
Great. Hey, y'all. Welcome back.
Welcome.
All right. So this is episode 4.
Yes, it is.
And we're going to get a little bit into EDS, also known as Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, which is a condition that I was diagnosed with. But before we get into all that gangster shit, it's icebreaker time.
It is. I chose it last time, so now it's your turn.
I'm going to reach into the sparkly box. Let's see. Oh.
It's all good.
Okay, great. Celebrity boy crushes.
Oh my God.
Or man crushes. This is so funny.
Michael B. Jordan.
Oh my God. Bacon cookies on his Instagram
Bacon
story.
cookies specifically.
Yes. Michael B. Jordan in the kitchen. What that mouth do? Okay. Who else? Jason Momoa. You beautiful, beautiful man.
I mean.
Good Lord.
Period.
Yeah, climbing those rocks.
I'm going to say one that's probably climbing those rocks.
Have you seen him climb the rocks?
No, but I'm going to Google it when you leave.
Oh, gosh.
Don't judge me.
All right.
Brad Pitt.
Oh, girl.
Fine.
Have you seen him in Snatch? That movie Snatch? It's phenomenal. And he was strong and, I loved him in Snatch.
Noted.
Also in Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
And Angelina, too.
Yeah,
we didn't put her in Girl Crushes.
It's okay. Honorable.
Yes. Yeah.
Honorable mention.
She's fluid.
She is.
And Thor, also known as Chris Hemsworth. Yes.
Period.
If you want to see a beautiful picture of him, go to my Instagram. Scroll down a little bit. I was lucky enough to meet him and take a picture with him. Idris.
I was going to say.
Elba. This is in no particular order.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Obviously. Because Idris should not be anywhere low on any list.
There's no order here. One more?
2. I have 2.
2 more. Okay,
because this can come rapid fire. Boris Kojo. Good Lord, that's a beautiful man. He's intimidatingly handsome.
He is.
He's intimidatingly handsome.
He's pretty.
Yeah, like if you were to walk into the yoga studio, like, hi, I'm here to do yoga, I would be very nervous.
I'd be like, here's this liability waiver. Please sign it.
And you know what? Will Smith.
I knew you were going to I don't know why. I was thinking,
Smith.
Well, he's
his
handsome.
Personality.
Yeah.
I've always said, like, he's just such a wonderful prototype for a partner. Yeah. Will Smith.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was fun.
That was fun.
That one was easier than the girl crushes. I feel like we were waiting for that one.
It's because it's so easy to talk about, boy crushes. It's something that we bring up more in conversation.
That's true.
We don't necessarily just be like, hey, girl, who are you crushing on as a celebrity? We just don't talk like that.
This is true.
So... anyway, but we do here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the ice has been
Safe
broken.
Space. Oh yeah. Dun 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 dun.
Dun. We'll work on it.
We're working on it. We keep saying that we're working on it, but we are.
That was like our first run.
Yeah. Okay.
After you made it official that's what we were gonna do.
Right. Okay. All right. So welcome to the episode about Ehlers-Danlos syndromes. EDS stands for Ehlers-Danlos syndromes with an S because there are 14 different types and 13 of those are considered rare diseases. And that last little straggly one out of the 14 does not have enough research and awareness on it. And guess what? That's the one I have. It's hypermobile EDS. And I won't get too medical, but it's important to know your elevator spiel about your diagnosis or your condition. When people ask you, it's good to be able to just speak eloquently about it. So here's the elevator spiel. EDS and hypermobility spectrum disorders are a group of connective tissue disorders that may be inherited and can produce a range of complex problems across multiple systems of the body. So you can say this to people. It's a slight mouthful, not a lot of terminology. However, people's eyes tend to glaze over. So I like to give a good example.
Ooh.
One example is, have you ever built anything from IKEA?
Yes, I have.
A dresser?
Yes.
Ooh. Okay. So if you don't build those dressers right, look, it will come crashing down. The drawers will fall out. It's like if you poke it one way, it'll like creak over to one side and be like tilted. I think of a body with EDS as a poorly assembled IKEA dresser. And like all of the parts are the same.
Right.
You know, that door is a strong door. All of those pieces are very strong, but they're just held together poorly. And so the connective tissue is compromised for people with EDS. And so, you might pull the drawer out and one day it might work fine. And then another day you might pull it out too far and everything comes crashing down. So that represents kind of like your joints as well as like your organs. Everything is kind of placed in there precariously. And depending on the day, is how, things can kind of get a little shaky.
Right.
And then also because the joints and the internal infrastructure are somewhat unstable, the muscles have to work twice as hard. And so with your muscles working twice as hard to maintain stability, planks. Holding a plank, have you guys ever done planks? Go to Pilates class, whatever. Planks. You know how hard your muscles have to work in that plank?
Yeah.
That's pretty much how muscles work for people in EDS all the time.
Wow.
Because your joints, in order to hold your body up, you have this natural stature as a skeleton. And if it is compromised, if it is lax, now your muscles have to do the work of your bones. So that can be very fatiguing. Obviously, planks are fatiguing as fuck.
Yeah.
And so it can tend to lead to you being very exhausted a lot. Wow. So that's kind of what EDS is. So let's go into just kind of like a little bit of my history and my experience with it. Throughout my childhood, I just was extremely flexible. I was extremely flexible, contortion level. I used to want to be a contortionist. We used to like shove me into like a box and I could just like fold my body up very easily.
Oh my God.
And it was a fun thing. It was like an entertainment thing for the family.
Right.
I used to get teased a lot for being very floppy. My hands in particular were very floppy. And I noticed a difference when I used to take karate. In karate, we had to kind of snap our punches back, where you would like punch out and then pull your arm back really fast, and it would create a snapping sound. And same with your kicks, like very fast, Bruce Lee style.
Exactly.
And when I would try to do that, I noticed that I didn't have that that resistance to be able to pull back. It was just like I was kind of like I was flapping rather than snapping. And I realized it did hurt for me, but I thought that I maybe just wasn't doing something right. But I could never create that snapping sound. So that was when I started noticing things were a little bit different. And then in my first yoga class, which happened to be a Bikram yoga class, I was 14 years old, and we were going into 75 minutes into the class, and we were in camel pose. And that was when my teacher, she kind of just stopped the class and was like, hey, everybody, all right, go ahead and come out of this posture. And Andrea, you hang in there. We're going to go into the full expression. And I had no clue what we were about to do. And she talked me into the full expression, which is like an extreme back bend. And I went into it, and I was like all the way bent backwards. I was on my knees, and my head was like going through past my feet, up to my shins. And I was experiencing no resistance in my body.
Was that painful for you?
Not at all.
Wow.
Not at all. I was just confused. I felt like I was in water and I didn't know which way was up.
Sure.
I was like, just kind of like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And it was so cool though. Like I felt cool being like very flexible and everybody clapped. And it was like, so it just was, I knew that I was a little different, but nothing, crazy or anything. So that was my youth. And then, so going into my 20s, I did start to experience more like individual things. And I started going to the doctor a little bit more about one thing here, one thing there, one thing here, one thing there.
Sure.
And the thing about EDS is that if you can't connect the issues, they say look at your tissues. And that's pretty much what it was. Everything that I was going to the doctors for was connective tissue related. But I mean, at the end of the day, your whole body is made up of connective tissue.
Right.
So, but that's why it makes sense to look at that and to consider it. But because this condition has like not a lot of awareness, oftentimes doctors don't even consider it. They just look at those individual things. So, at around 19, I got on my first prescription for a laxative because my digestive system was so sluggish, and that's very common with people with EDS. And then not too much longer after that, I was experiencing a lot of swelling in my legs, and so I went and got a ultrasound, and they saw that my veins, the valves in my veins, were floppy. Go figure. And instead of the structure being very like structured in my veins, they were kind of like flapping down. So the blood, instead of going back to my heart, was kind of going back down and pooling into the veins and into my ankles and everything. So I had to get support hose. I was 20 and I had like support hose in my 20s, and then I had to get some sclerotherapy, which is like a procedure to kind of kill off some of those veins. And then I went to the doctor for plantar fasciitis. I thought my feet were broken. And because of the amount of pain that I was experiencing, I couldn't walk, I couldn't touch my feet without being in extreme amount of pain. And anybody who has plantar fasciitis, y'all know that struggle. And oftentimes that's something that heals if you give it a break. But I wasn't getting any break in that pain. And so I went to the doctor for that. And then anyway, it's just little things here and there that weren't adding up. But I still was like, I was still hustling through life, being a busybody. I was still very active. And I was working at Lululemon at the time, and they have an incentive where you go out and you work out in the community. And so I loved trying new ways of exercise. And one of my favorites was CrossFit. And I tried CrossFit. Oh my God. And honestly, I loved it. It was a ton of fun. I loved the music, and I loved how you could like really push your body. Right. But the recovery for me was about, at the very least, 3 weeks.
That's crazy.
I could not, my body just wouldn't recover. And I could feel it all through my joints, and it was a very painful recovery. But I just thought that it was because I was weak. Right. And honestly, moving towards my late 20s, I thought that everything that I was experiencing was a result of me being weak. So I kept I was like starting to do more research and learning more about the body and how it works and muscle imbalances. So I started to like YouTube things, and I was like learning different ways of physical therapy or corrective exercise therapy. And I was trying all of them. And at this point in my late 20s, we opened the yoga studio. Mm-hmm. And I was teaching classes all of the time, and I felt this need to present so perfect. I had to, I'm teaching people yoga and holding space for people to come and heal their bodies. I didn't feel like it was okay. I didn't feel like it was my place to be experiencing pain. And so I pretended. I started to pretend that I wasn't experiencing things. And sometimes people would see me and be like, hey, Andrea, why are you walking so funny?
Right.
And I would be like, oh, I have plantar fasciitis. And that would, most of the time, kind of like people would be like, oh, wow, that sucks.
Sure.
And I got sympathy for that and understanding for that. Like people know plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
And so it was fine. And that's why I'm like, I hobble a little bit. And oftentimes people with EDS, the number one thing they have is an abnormal gait.
Exactly.
And, oh, that's your reminder. It's noon. Yeah. And so anyway, not too long after I opened the studio, a student who I'm going to refer to her as Dee Dee, because I didn't want to just like call her name out. But yeah, I'm going to refer to her as Dee Dee. She was like, can I ask you a personal question? And I said, sure. And she was like, are you in pain? And immediately I was like, I felt affronted. Like, I felt like she asked me something very personal. And at that point, I hadn't really even admitted it to myself that I was in pain. And the fact that she called me out, it felt like, I was like, no. Right away, I was like, no. And then I realized that I had been experiencing pain for, like, when I look back, like, wow, I've been experiencing this pain for a long time. And so I went home, I talked to my roommates, and I was like, hey, do you guys experience pain in your bodies? And both of them were like, not really. I mean, sometimes when I wake up, I'm a little stiff. But I was like, no hip pains, no knee pains, lower back, and both of them were like, no, not every day. Right. And, at this point I was experiencing so much, especially hip and knee pain. Like I couldn't really even get in and out of my car without, assisting my legs in and out. And I was doing it just like, I thought that it was such a normal thing.
I was just about to say, like, how quick we are to normalize the sensations that we're having that are extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And how just you had to normalize it.
I did. And also because I just felt like it wasn't okay for me to be in pain.
Absolutely. And also, like, being in the industry.
Yes. In this wellness industry, showing up a certain way. Yeah. I felt like,
yeah, absolutely.
I was like,
it wasn't your place, like you said, to have pain, which is crazy.
I felt like I was not deserving of that because I was looking at myself like you have your arms, you have your legs, you're healthy, you're not experiencing any type of like cancer or anything. Like I couldn't think of, anything that would be causing me to experience
and I think that
pain.
That's something that people with chronic conditions and chronic ailments do, is like the it could be worse kind of notion, where it's like, this is pretty worse for you. This is pretty bad for you.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's
and then
enough.
You didn't really have anything to compare it to.
Yeah.
It didn't sound like you had a lot of like people you could talk to about what you were, or like maybe your willingness to talk about it was kind of.
Well, anytime I did bring it up, like the pains that I was experiencing, I would talk to, for the most part, my mom, and it would be very like solution focused. Sure. And with my family, it would be like, okay, well, drink more water and eat turmeric and, stretch your body a little bit more, take vitamin B, and which are all things that are going to help in just your overall health. But in my case,
to not even know either, right? Because you didn't even know at this time.
No, I didn't. I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't know what was happening. So, I mean, those things are good for you, but they were not aiding me at all.
And then you're not even.
Right. And so my conditions continue to actually degenerate. And then so by the time I hit 30, I literally hit a wall. I hit a wall to like literally January of 2018. I was in so much pain, and it was every day. I would wake up in the morning, and first thing, the first thing that I would wake up in pain. I would step out of the bed and I would be in pain. I couldn't take a step without feeling like my joints and my skeleton was just giving up on me. And I reclused. I wasn't really going out with my friends. Anytime that I would go out to go to the studio, teach a class, and I would come home and I would take off all my clothes. Literally all my skin was hurting, and I'd have to lay down and be on something soft. And I wouldn't even lay down to sleep. I would just lay down to breathe.
Right.
And even just laying in my bed was hurting. So like I would have to like prop certain areas up to kind of like maintain some type of like neutral spine. I had these casts that I would strap onto my ankles, and it was very unsexy.
Sure.
And and then when I would go out, I was bracing all of my joints with support. Like I was like wrapping up my knees, I was wrapping up my ankles, I was wrapping up my the soles of my feet, and I was also getting so many massages. Literally, I was going to the a massage almost a week, and I was getting deep tissue massages. It was, first of all, don't do that. If you have EDS, don't do that, because the muscles are tight in order to maintain some type of stability. Yeah. And so basically I was exacerbating my problem, but this was because I had no knowledge of what I was experiencing. So I would get these deep tissue massages, and literally I would feel okay for an hour, and then right afterwards it would be like I would Charlie horse all over my whole body. Right back. And so the next day I would be like, okay, I just need another massage. I just need to get another massage. I was just seeking relief.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it. And while I was doing this, I even started using a cane. And when I used a cane, that was when I really started to be like, okay, there's something here that is wrong, and I have to figure out what this is.
Right.
So I started to do more research, and now I'm looking into actual like conditions. I was like, do I have hip dysplasia? I had one teacher ask me if I had that, and so I looked into that. I looked into different, like I had a student, say, have you considered that you might have lupus? And so I was like looking into that, and I was like, all of these things are like similar, even Marfan's. My cousin has Marfan's, so I was like, okay, it's in the family line, very similar like body types, but it still wasn't lining up with what I had. And then one night I was again on this deep dive, and I came across a blog, and a woman basically described her whole story, and it was she named what like symptom per symptom, as well as her relentless search for answers. And she basically described my whole story, and I read it, and it was like after hitting so many dead ends, it was like finally this door just opened, and it was like I walked through that door of like understanding, and it was like one door after the next, and I was just moving straight forward and getting all of these answers when I finally stumbled upon EDS. And there was so much clarity. It was like I could get my first breath in. And I found an NIH, National Institute of Health article, and I sent it to my mom, and she works in the medical field. She's a nurse anesthetist at U of M, and she was floored that she didn't know about it, and she felt like it was something that she should have known, and she felt almost like she was very emotional about it, and so was I. I was just grateful for an understanding, but she was like, I should have known about this. And that's the whole reason why I feel like it's really important to talk about it, because a lot of people in the medical field do not even, they don't even know it or consider it as something that to consider, to like take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And it's really important to get that awareness out there for it. So that, for me, that's what's so important. Why, like, I can't imagine, you were diagnosed at 12, and so me and my mom having these discussions, we were like, you were presenting so many symptoms or characteristics in my childhood, and had I had that that awareness, then things could have been different. With going through a decade of trying to understand my body, it also comes at your own mental expense. Cost. Yes, and oftentimes anxiety, depression, and PTSD come along with Ehlers-Danlos, and people not believing you, doctors, invalidating, the symptoms that you're experiencing. So it is important to know that if you think that you have EDS, it's you've already been on this journey before you heard this podcast. You're not going to listen to this for the first time and just be like, oh, you know what? I am experiencing these things. Like, no, you have been experiencing a lot of these symptoms, and so it's really important to look into. And then I guess the diagnosis can be in part two.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the diagnosis and learning how to manage the conditions,
knowing
after
what
that.
it is.
Yeah, but I think especially for people with EDS, leading up to that diagnosis, just that trying to understand your body and what's happening is very important to talk about, because that part is it's a long journey, and that it does feel lonely.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and really quick about EDS, the symbol that you're going to see a lot is a zebra. And I'm wearing my Ehlers-Danlos Society sweater, and there's a zebra here on the front of it. And so a lot of people with EDS, we call ourselves like zebras. And so the saying goes, when you hear hooves, think of a zebra, because oftentimes when you hear hooves, what do you think of? A horse. Right. So for doctors, instead of saying, oh yeah, you have arthritis, or you have arthritis with fibromyalgia, it's like, no, how about let's think of what you have to think. It could be something else, and it's something rare. And so that's why the zebra becomes the logo for Ehlers-Danlos. And also, no two zebras are alike. So EDS presents so differently in so many different people. I met one other zebra, and she was like, it's so nice and refreshing to see somebody so healthy and vibrant with EDS. And I didn't feel that way at all. But for her to say that, it meant a lot to me. I've seen people in wheelchairs. I've seen people with all types of braces. I've seen people with oxygen tanks. And so, it presents so differently. And but we're all going through a lot of the same similar symptoms. So, and we're all here together.
And we are.
The zebra love. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm looking forward to part 2.
Okay.
I think it'll be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let the people know where they can contact us if they have questions.
So if you have questions, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at thechronichustle@gmail.com.
Yes.
If you want to check out my social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at Andrea Mahal. Sorry, she usually leads this. I
I
feel
know.
like so like
I
choppy.
know. We're passing it back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Adria is
Adria Moses. At Adria Moses. So we appreciate y'all. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.